It's March, which means it is go time for gardeners. And I'm going to share with you 20 different vegetables that you can start right now. I garden in Central Florida, zone 9B, but this video is really going to be for everyone in the 8s to all the way down to 11, I guess. It's kind of crazy this year. I feel like the weather is changing differently this year than it has in previous years. In the past, we would have February, March, and April where it kind of slowly warmed up. It wasn't like horrific, beautiful weather to garden. It went from snowing in Pensacola just a few weeks ago to now it's like 80-degree heat. It feels like we're in Miami in August. Maybe not that bad, but it is really bad, guys. It is so hot. We had no like transition, which is unfortunate. It seems like we're going straight in. So the veggies that I typically grow in March, I tend to have more things that can handle the warm temperatures, like, you know, the fruiting crops, cucumbers, squashes, those kinds of things. But this year, because it's heating up so quickly and we don't seem to have this transition, unfortunately, we're going straight into hot weather crops, guys. Now, if you're in zone 8, your last frost date should have occurred or is about to occur. Little pro tip here. You can check your 10-day forecast. So say your last frost date is March 15th. You can check your 10-day forecast on like the 5th. And as long as you don't see anything coming up that's below 40 degrees at night, go for it. You are good. For the rest of us, there is no frost that's happening at any point anymore. I mean, unless something crazy happens, which wouldn't surprise me this year. But let's talk about some of the things that you can start in your garden now, specifically from seed. So let's start with greens, because this is probably going to be where things start to change pretty dramatically. So last month we could still do some lettuces and those kinds of things. And if you're in the north part, very, very high north, I'm talking zone 8A, you could probably still do a couple rounds of lettuce. I wouldn't go with the larger crops like this collards right here. It's just going to take a little bit too long. But a couple really heat tolerant greens that you can be growing is going to be number one, Swiss chard always stands out to me. You can start those seeds now and they do actually grow through the summer. They're really prone to being chewed up by aphids. It's like their favorite thing. And they do get a little bitter, so definitely give them super, super heavy shade. The other ones are going to be your tropical spinaches. So that's going to be red Malabar, longevity, Okinawa. One of my personal favorites, most of these are perennials, by the way, it's going to be Sisso, S-I-S-S-O-O. Sisso spinach, oh my gosh, grows all year round. Doesn't particularly love the winters. It kind of slows down quite a bit, but during the summers, it grows phenomenally, and it is really the one to me that tastes exactly like spinach. I grow it as a ground cover underneath my fruit trees, and it gives us spinach and like salad greens through the entire summer months. I also grow indoors. So at this point I have switched. I'm no longer planting any more lettuces out in my garden, and I recommend that you not do that if you're definitely in the central and southern parts of Florida. That's not your jam anymore. But I move them inside and I grow them in my AeroGarden farm. Now I know AeroGarden kind of went off the scene for a little while, and hopefully they come back. They say that they're supposed to be coming back in the spring. I don't know. But really any hydroponic system can grow lettuce indoors, and that's what I recommend at this point if you're living down here. But if you want a solid green, I definitely go with those tropical spinaches or a Swiss chard. Those are your options. Now let's talk fruiting crops. So this is going to be tomatoes, tomatillos, peppers, eggplants, cucumbers, squashes, all of those. I think at this point, with the way that the weather is behaving, I'm going to say that these guys are out. Now, if you're in the northern part of the state, absolutely you can go with starts. I wouldn't necessarily start from seed unless you're maybe doing cucumbers. Cucumbers kind of grow quickly, so in the northern parts you can go ahead and do some cucumbers directly. But the eggplants, the tomatoes are probably going to be off the table from a seed perspective, but you can grab some starts. Now, if you're in Central Florida or South Florida, you guys should have done this a month or two ago. So they're not really within the range now, mainly because those tomatoes or those eggplants don't pollinate well when we hit into the summer months. That heat and the humidity and stuff, it kind of keeps them from being able to pollinate the flowers. So you might be able to keep your plant alive through the bugs, through the humidity, through the disease, through the heat, but you probably aren't going to get those flowers pollinating, and then you don't have fruit. So what's the point, right? Now, peppers you could still grow, even in the south of Florida, the deep 11s, 10s, 9s, 8 zones. Yeah, you can definitely do peppers. I would encourage you to get starts, because seeds, it's too long right now. If you started them now, they would be very young, trying to go through the hottest part of summer, which isn't like their ideal state. And then you'd be looking for a fall crop. What I'm suggesting is that you get starts or baby plants and get those in ASAP. Some, like the hot peppers, will produce through the summer, whereas some of the sweet peppers don't like to produce when it's super, super hot. The only exception I would give to the fruiting plants is going to be your tropical squashes. So there are some squashes, whether that's summer squashes or winter squashes, that you can still start that like our heat. So I'm thinking from a summer squash perspective, tromboncino, or what do they call it? Zucchini rambankit? I can't say the word. From a winter squash, it's going to be something like the Tahitian melon squash or Seminole pumpkins. A lot of the machata varieties can handle some of our heat and the bugs that we get down here, as well as the powdery mildew and the vine borers. Man, there's so many issues. But those are kind of the ones that I would say that you can still start. Maybe not the 10s and 11s, guys. Zone 10 and 11, you guys probably should have done that last month. You might be able to get away with it if you can find it like a super shady spot. They do tend to be able to grow through summer. It's just you kind of want to get them up and growing before you hit 90-degree temperatures. You kind of want them moving along so that they're like adult plants before they get there. So that's the one exception I would say to the fruiting crops this time of year. The next one on the list is going to be some of the non-traditional warm weather crops. I'm thinking beans, corns, and melons. So beans, I have a bunch started that I actually started last month. You can still start them. You definitely want to go for varieties that are going to grow quickly, because beans are going to get pest pressure. They're also going to start getting diseases like rust and stuff like that once our rains start, but they are pretty quick. So you can go for a round of green beans. I would definitely, or even dry beans, but I would definitely put them in a shaded spot. This bed right here only gets about 4 to 5 hours a day. So that's where I would plant them. I almost feel like corn is too late, but that seems so not correct this time of year. Corn likes warm weather. It can pollinate in high heat. I have seen people in South Florida grow corn through summer. It struggles. There's a lot of watering and fertilizing and stuff that you have to do to get it to limp along. But it is possible, and it can be done. Normally, this is the time of year that I start corn, but normally the temperatures are not quite this hot, so it's making me worried that when I start my corn this month, which is what I was planning on doing, that by the time it's ready to harvest, it's going to be too hot, and I'm going to really have to be taking care of this corn, and it means that it's probably not going to be like the best harvest I could get. So I don't know, weather and patterns. Typically, I start my corn right at the beginning of March. March 1st to March 15th is generally the time frame that I start my corn down here. And like I said, I'm in 9B. So if you're a little bit north of me, you're probably going to do a little bit better. If you're south of me, probably should have done that last month. But I don't know. It's worth a shot, I guess. Maybe. I don't know. We're going to see, right? It was on my goals to do corn this year and do a lot of it. I've grown corn in the past, and just the bugs get pretty extreme, and the amount of nutrients that corn requires. On the flip side, melons are really cool to grow during the summers here in the South. So that's going to be watermelons and honeydews, cantaloupes. They absolutely love the heat, and they do so well. Now, there are a lot of negatives to growing melons. Once the rains start, powdery mildew becomes a pretty significant problem. Pickle worms, another really big problem for me. Squash bugs, another really big problem. Like the bugs and the disease can really take these out. So you definitely want to give them lots of space, grow them up trellis to get the airflow, You can protect them by putting them in greenhouses or covering them so that they don't get rained on. I mean, the humidity is probably going to cause it anyway. What I do is I take a treatment approach, and what I will do is every week I spray either BT or spinoside to take care of the bugs, and then I spray hydrogen peroxide and water. I do not wait for me to have a problem. I start this proactively, and that's what keeps mine growing through the entire season, and I do it methodically every single week, very regular. I do not skip a week, because you skip 1 week and you'll have an infestation or you will have a disease problem. And once you really get powdery mildew, I know there's people out there that say that you can cure it. I don't think so. I have tried. Maybe you can cure it in different environments. Down here, nope. Once you have it, you have it. And you just need to try to get your harvest before that plant dies. That's really what happens. But melons, in terms of the heat and the flowers pollinating, it will still pollinate the flowers. Definitely give it lots of shade. That's going to help as well. But they do like the heat. So you could do some melons. Next up on the list is going to be hot weather crops. One of those hot weather crops, or really year-round crops, is going to be green onions. Not bulbing onions, actual green onions. And I particularly like these. These are the Florida Finley perennial multiplier onions. I think that these do really, really well, and you know, they grow forever. I do have to pull these out once we get to the dead heat of summer and kind of let them dry, and then wait till like September and put them back in the ground. That's how they kind of stay alive. If you leave them through summer, they will live, but man, they have a really hard time growing back. And I have a few of them in the garden that I did that with, and they just struggled to come back. So definitely pull them out like around June or July, dry them off, let them hang dry to like you would curing an onion, and then you can put them back in. But regular green onions, like from seed, those work too. You can grow those all year round. Some other hot weather crops is going to be okra, cowpeas, sweet potatoes, those tropical squashes we talked about earlier, like Seminole pumpkin, and even something cool like jicama or peanuts, which are all really fun things to grow. I would definitely encourage you to start those sooner than later. And it seems so early. I usually don't start these until like April or May. And here we are in March, and I'm starting them just, it's so hot. I don't understand. But the hotter it gets, the harder it is for these seeds to germinate. So when you're starting them from seed, or when you're transplanting them and they have to like kind of adjust to being out here where they're, you know, dealing with a lot more pressure from the heat and the evaporation and the watering and the pests and the disease and all that stuff, they have a little bit harder of a time if you wait until we're like dead heat, like 90 degrees during the day. If you can get them in, or the seeds started while you're still in the 70s, 80s, they're going to grow up and establish better, and then they're going to produce throughout the entire summer. So definitely get those seeds started ASAP. Don't wait. Even though it really feels like we can wait, I wouldn't wait. I would definitely get those going now. Sweet potatoes are unique because you need to actually start slips. Slips take about 6 weeks to generate from an actual potato. If you have sweet potatoes from your previous season where you still have some slips still alive, which is what I'm doing, you can circumvent that, because you can just take cuttings from your current vines and reroot those into the ground, and that way you don't have to do the potatoes. That's actually what I'm doing this year. And then the last thing that you could probably start is cover cropping. And my favorite cover crop, if you do not want to deal with the summers here in Florida growing, is going to be sun hemp. Sun hemp is it's not that plant. It's not the plant you're thinking of, hemp. It's not that. It's not even in the same family or anything. It just has a similar name. But it grows as like a green manure. So it's going to give nitrogen, some of the highest nitrogen possible, into your garden. And it absolutely loves growing in our Florida summers. It loves heat. It absolutely loves it. It will germinate the seeds in heat. It does not care. So you can start those and seed it real heavy. And then as the plant grows tall, you can kind of cut it waist high, let that drop into the bed or into another bed as a mulch, and then just keep doing that through the entire summer season. Do not leave your beds empty during summer. Even if you don't want to grow anything, you don't want to deal with the heat, I understand that. Put some marigolds down, put some cowpeas down, put some sun hemp down, and just let it, you know, take up space in the bed so that you have something growing so that it's feeding the soil health is being protected, and at the same time you can cut those things down and let them drop into the bed and let them be living mulch. It's going to really create a lot of organic material in your beds. So if you've been struggling with like nutrients in your bed, or you're having to add a lot of fertilizer, growing a cover crop through summer is really the way to go. Now that we walked through everything we're gonna grow from seed this month, let's take a look around and I can show you what I have in the garden that's actually still producing. Some of it's gonna surprise you. First, I have some snapdragons that are growing, but believe it or not, I still have lettuce. This is a Salanova lettuce right there, and there's some right there too. They're kind of scooting in. This one, as you can see, is starting to bolt. It's getting a little bit tall. So that one I need to take out, but those Salanovas really go the distance. And I have a couple carrots that are still growing. They're still a little bit small, so I'm gonna leave those alone. In this bed right here, I have, it looks like broccoli, celery, onions, and garlic. This garlic I started super late, so it's not as big and healthy as I'd like. It's kind of making me a little worried about what my season is gonna look like. But believe it or not, I'm still getting broccoli. These have not bolted yet. Now I keep cutting them. I cut off all of the sprouts, all the florets. I took the main head off, and now I'm just doing all the florets, and it's still growing. And these broccoli plants are really protecting my celery that's under here. So I have all this celery that's growing too. And I can feel it. It's nice and cool. And that coolness is keeping it from getting bitter. But I am gonna have to take off these broccoli plants soon, and when I do that, I'm gonna take out the celery too, because otherwise it's gonna get really bitter. Here I have more broccoli where I took the main head off, and I'm still just getting all of the little sprouts. Here is my very dead looking sweet potatoes, but these are the ones where I'm gonna get the slips from. They're starting to come back just a little bit, and so I'm gonna give them a little bit more time, and then I'm gonna start taking cuttings. My Brussels sprouts are still coming along. They've got at least another 30 days before I can harvest these. Hopefully they can hold out the heat. What tends to happen with Brussels sprouts if they get too hot is the little sprouts, or the little tiny cabbages that are on there, they will do something called blowing out, where the actual whole head will pop open and it will become an open head, like an open leaf lettuce, rather than being a closed head Brussels sprout. They're still good to eat, but that's not what we're going for. Then I have some of my late season cabbages here. These are the Savoys. These always take a little bit longer, but you can see that the heads are starting to form right now. They're getting tighter, but once again, these got another 4 weeks at least before they're ready to go. And I have a few other ones that I planted a little bit later. We'll see if we'll get those. A ton of herbs. Look at how all the herbs are doing. I gotta cut these back. If I cut these back, they're gonna have a better time when it comes to summer. The smaller they are, the less issues they're gonna have with the heat. I still have, like that guy right there is, I believe, a broccoli, and that's a cabbage. Both of these are known for being heat tolerant, but we both know that they're not that heat tolerant. And then one of my favorite things this time of year is going to be the fruits. So this is my peach tree that is starting to flower. Look at that, it's starting to bud out. It all just happened recently. I have some flowers happening on the plum tree here. The graft still looks like they're, oh my goodness. All right guys, I haven't showed you the grafting situation yet, but I do have some graft buds coming out. Hopefully, if this works out the way I hope it does, I'll be able to show you a grafting video soon. Look at that. I think we might have success this year. Did a couple different grafts, the wedge grafts and then some approaching grafts. That's why this tree is sitting right here. It's called an approach graft. The Indian sherbet hasn't come back yet, but the CISO spinach that I was mentioning earlier, once again, didn't particularly like my winters here, but it's all still alive. I'm gonna cut it back to about maybe 3 or 4 inches off the ground, and it will all come back nice and full. The elderberry hasn't really done much. The loquats have fruit. Look at them. You know, they're not quite there yet. They're gonna need to ripen quite a bit, but they have fruit everywhere. Very cool. The pomegranate is just now starting to get some leaves. This is usually my last one that comes in. And then the mulberries have a ton of mulberries. Can you see all those? They're everywhere. These trees produce so much. I have no idea what I'm doing with them, but I'm thinking of powdering them and making them into like a Kool-Aid. I think that'd be fun. And I hate to even show this to you guys because it's a sad state, which is my avocado. Avocado here went through a lot of stress during this winter season. This was the coldest he's ever gotten down to. But as you can see, he has lost a bunch of his leaves. There's still quite a bit there. So I'm fairly certain that all this is gonna grow back. We just have to give it a chance. Let's get up close and see if we can see. Yeah, I think there's even buds coming in right here. So that's good news. Here's the bad news. Can you see that? That is the bud for the fruit. And it is brown, brown, brown. I think that cold came so late and so cold that it killed off all the buds. We had so much heat. Well, this one looks maybe. That's like a maybe. You can see some green happening there. But we had such warm weather, and then we had that big cold snap where, you know, it snowed in Pensacola and it got pretty cold here too. It got into like the mid-20s here, and Kato did not like it one bit. And so he was blooming at the time that cold snap happened. So I'm fairly certain that means no avocados for us this year. I'll keep you updated, but I'm fairly certain no avocados this year. And then the last one we can't forget, check out the blueberries. That's a lot of flowers happening on these blueberries. I am so excited. My blueberries have struggled for years, and I think I finally got them going this last year. So I hope that gives you an idea of what you can plant and what you could still be harvesting out of your garden this time of year. If you're really enjoying this series and you don't want to miss one of these, make sure to head down and subscribe and hit that notification bell. That way you are alerted whenever one of these videos come out, so you know exactly what to be starting in your garden, because summer's right around the corner and we need all the help we can get. Thanks a lot, guys, for hanging out with me today. Happy gardening.